Thank you very much. Let me start with reflecting for a moment about the depth of the substantial positions which are dividing the NPT parties along the huge fault line identified by the humanitarian initiative. The humanitarian initiative, in the end, is a consequence by a large majority over what they see as the complete failure of the previous disarmament strategy to bring things to an end. The step-by-step approach, I must say, as a political analyst, is politically completely plausible, as most changes in world history were done by step-by-step, and if they weren't done by step-by-step, they were fairly unpleasant most of the time. So it's politically plausible, but it's today seen by the majority as a simple pretense to avoid going to zero. And similarly, the argument that disarmament needs the right conditions is completely plausible in itself, but it does not cut ice with the majority because the conditions which disfavor disarmament steps are to a large degree caused by actions of the most powerful states, and that is, incidentally, the nuclear weapon states. And I have only to point to the two conditions which today might be the strongest impediments for going forward with nuclear disarmament: the Ukraine crisis and the situation in the South China Sea, to see the hands of the nuclear weapon states involved there. The disarmament steps in the 5 years before the 2050 review were no doubt quantitatively significant, but they were seen by many, meanwhile, as just adjusting the deterrence posture to current circumstances, and not at all by a serious intention, motivated by a serious intention to go towards zero. On the other hand, the refusal by the non-aligned to improve the non-proliferation toolbox in any way, as long as disarmament does not proceed, honors no doubt the principle that the NPT is a bargain, but it's at the same time a very cheap way to avoid useful but possibly burdensome measures. We have to realize that the humanitarian approach today attracts the overwhelming majority of the member states, and the humanitarian pledge attracts a sizable majority. But at the same time, the group in opposition, namely the nuclear weapon states plus their allies, represent, if you call them representative, a majority of mankind in their states. This was pointed to by the French ambassador during the conference. He did not earn much applause for that, but quantitatively, he was, of course, right. Now, the summary of all that is the parties today are highly polarized on the issue, and the polarization was certainly exacerbated by strategic miscalculations on either side, the all-too-long refusal of all nuclear weapon states to at least engage with the humanitarian initiative on the conferences, and compliments to the Brits and the Americans that they did in the end. And on the other hand, the very strong trend by the initiative leaders and allied NGOs to put nuclear weapon states and their allies in the same basket is not very wise if you're looking for allies. And I can tell you as a member of the German delegation that it has a psychological impact when you are put together with the rest. I was tempted to buy a button with the sign "Weasel" on it, just to protest against this tactic. Now, where do we go from here? I think it's important to realize that despite the polarization which I just explained, neither the humanitarian initiative nor the group of the nuclear weapon states and their allies are unitary. Nuclear weapon states are split on their readiness to engage in dialogue. Allies are split on a very large continuum between those who are very strong sympathies for the humanitarian initiative to those who insist now more than ever on extended deterrence and all that comes with it. And there's no agreement there. The resolutions which were submitted to the first committee in the previous weeks suggest quite a range of preferences and options. An open-ended working group with a negotiation mandate and the decision rule of the General Assembly, an open-ended working group without a negotiation mandate and a consensus decision rule, a new forum outside the established disarmament venues, an Ottawa-like grouping of like-minded countries with negotiation objectives, all that has been debated. And we have, in the end, arrived at what we had before, namely an open-ended working group that is purely deliberative. On substance, what has been put forward is a so-called simple ban agreement, a comprehensive nuclear weapons convention, a time-bound step-by-step approach with a fixed end date, a step-by-step approach with target gates for a number of steps and all sorts of combinations thereof. I should say that, again, as a political analyst, I see problems with all of these approaches. When I hear the word simple in connection to nuclear disarmament, I tend to faint because as a seasoned observer of this scene, I know that nothing is simple there. And a simple ban consisting of 2 or 3 paragraphs may leave yawning gaps in verification, compliance, and enforcement, which we all would wish to avoid. A comprehensive convention will take long to negotiate, and it might prove much more controversial in the details, even among its promoters, than many think. A time-bound step-by-step approach with a fixed end date is inviting people to filibuster about the date. What might it be? And a step-by-step approach with target gates for a number of steps multiplies the points for filibustering, which does not speak against any of them, but it just shows it's not simple. The worst thing would be business as usual that could finally split the NPT community and impose immediate stagnation on a treaty which usually leads to erosion. Let me conclude by thinking a little moment out of the box or out of the straitjacket in which we all find ourselves. Could it not be possible to agree on an indicative target date for a zero nuclear weapons world? This is not at all without precedence. We have agreed on such target dates on the Millennium Goals. We have agreed on such target dates in the Climate Convention negotiations. And this is nothing different. Of course, this is a commitment to try one's best to meet the target date. But it is nothing that can be put before court and then be enforced. Should it not be possible? Secondly, should it not be possible to agree on indicative target gates for certain useful steps on which we all agree? We did so in 1995 on the CTBT. We could do so today on an FMCT, and maybe there are 1 or 2 more steps which we can agree. For the European Union, let me just put forward a few thoughts what could be done, even though the 2015 conference showed the Union most divided ever since it developed a common foreign and security policy in the non-proliferation area. I've seen the last 7 conferences. The 1995 conference was the first where the Union appeared in a joint fashion after France had acceded to the NPT. 2000 was a high time with a clear influence of the Union on the final document. 2005, we were saved by the Americans to show division. But 2015 was very, very bad. So what could we possibly do despite polarization? We could seriously discuss whether we want to take the FMCT out of the city and to create a separate venue to put it forward. I would not say that agreement among the EU member states is granted on that issue, but a serious discussion, I think, would make sense because we all agree we want such a treaty. Secondly, we could propose a procedure to address that issue of necessary conditions for nuclear abolition. It is a point which France makes very strong. It's a point on which the United Kingdom has also a clear position. And it's a point where one should engage between nuclear weapon state and non-nuclear weapon states. How would we wish a world to be in which the final step from low numbers to zero would be possible? It's an important thought exercise, and it might lead to quite operational steps that should be taken to move in that direction. The EU could initiate a study on the meaning of irreversibility as a condition for nuclear armament. It's on the books since the year 2000. It's an interesting principle, which is usually defined in technical terms, and we could just start thinking about what it means. And I think the Union is a good place to start there, because France, among the 5 nuclear weapon states, is a world champion in irreversibility. France has dismantled, as you know, the test site and the production sites for fissile material for bomb purposes. So we have something to show, and we have a starting point from which we could proceed. And finally, the European Union could follow the British example and start a major program for research on disarmament verification. The EU has at least 2 institutions that are technically in a very good position to do such studies. That's Euratom with its safeguarding experiences in nuclear weapon states, and of course ISPRA with the Trans-Uranium Institute. And of course, in the member states, there is a panoply of capable research institutions that could be involved. These were 4 steps which are, in my view, in the realm of the Union, and I would hope that we can move forward. Thank you.